Okay, I'm back. Let's do this. The premise of Kirby Reanimated is simple. Take an episode of the early 2000s Kirby cartoon and have every single shot reanimated by one of over 300 different animators, with each animator reinterpreting Kirby and friends in their own unique visual style. 3D, stop motion, weird, sexy anime, it's all here, and it's awesome to see so many artists with so many styles come together to make this surreal, loving tribute to one of Nintendo's best loved characters. It's all available free on YouTube, linked to everything I talk about in the description below. If you, like me, were once a teenager who wandered the halls of 90s shopping malls, you should really check out the Dead Mall series. The videos chronicle YouTuber Dan Bell's expeditions into old shopping malls, some of which are on the verge of abandonment, and some of which are well past it. It's a surreal but oddly comforting experience watching Dan explore these massive carcasses of 90s culture, as he gives the histories of the centres as well as the reasons they fell into dilapidation. Nostalgia is a huge part of the appeal of this channel, but it also feels like there's something more here too. After watching enough of these videos, they start to feel like a bizarre, nihilistic statement on the disposable nature of consumer culture. These massive spaces which were once so alive and thriving, now empty testaments to days long gone. It's beautiful, it's sad, it's eerie, and it's one of those channels I just love to zone out in front of, and so if you feel like doing the same, do give this one a look. A channel that's been exploding in recent months is Natalie Wynn's ContraPoints. Focused on social issues, gender, and sexuality, Natalie's natural charisma combined with her cutting insights and lavish production mean that even when she's discussing society's darkest issues, she's doing so in a way that's deeply entertaining while also feeling honest and sincere. One of my favourite examples of this being her video on incels, which is a sobering and sympathetic look at one of the internet's most troubled and troubling subcultures, exploring both the rampant misogyny that dominates incel message boards, but critically also the cycle of self-loathing that fuels it. And this is what I love about Contra's videos, her ability to approach her subjects with, if not affection, then at least empathy, going beyond mere ridicule and creating dialogues that everyone can benefit from. She's also covered topics like capitalism, anime, and the apocalypse, all of which I highly recommend. Joseph Anderson is one of those YouTubers who can make an hour-long video on a game I do not care about and will never play, and yet I will sit there transfixed the entire time. There's little pretense to Anderson's videos. He's not interested in giving you anything other than his cold, honest opinion on the games he plays. One of his most recent and interesting being his breakdown of Fallout 76, which is both a surgical takedown of what has to be one of the most maligned games in history, but also takes the time to explain why he spent 100 plus hours playing the game, discussing both the oddly entertaining experience its many bugs created, as well as the parts of the game that very clearly had love and effort poured into them. And it's that willingness to go against general consensus that I find so endearing about Anderson's videos. Even when I find myself disagreeing with him, I can't help but respect his razor-sharp criticisms and appreciating his dry humor. Anderson even once had the gall to suggest on Twitter that Silent Hill 2 is anything other than the masterpiece it is, and yet I still recommend him in this video, which should show you just how much I respect and enjoy his work. This next one's a little bit sad, but as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the Super Best Friends disbanded last December. I've said previously that I'll always be thankful to the Best Friends, but the truth is that isn't even for the initial plug they gave this channel, but just for the years and years of entertainment prior to that. I started watching The Best Friends about 8 years ago, and their videos along with their podcast helped shape my taste in media, as well as just making the world feel a little less bleak. Matt, Pat, Wooly, Liam, you guys did a lot of good for a lot of people during your time as The Best Friends, more so than I think any of you will ever know. And on behalf of myself, and I am sure so many others, I just wanted to take this opportunity and say thank you. The former Best Friends are all still working on their own projects, on their own Twitch and YouTube channels, which I implore you to check out. These guys have and always will be legends of the internet to me, and whether they're together or not, I'm just happy to see them doing well.
She's into superstitions.
The first episode of SSSS Gridman centers around a boy taking control of a giant robot and using it to defend his city from an invading monster. And it's a competent, if typical, throwback to tokusatsu shows of old. And that is until episode 2, when the same boy wakes to discover that the entire city has been reset. Its citizens oblivious to the battle that just took place, but the people who died are still gone, their families convinced they've been dead for years. And so begins Studio Trigger's bold reimagining of Gridman. And from here, the story only grows more personal and complicated. Characters aren't who they seem, endearing, awkward relationships develop between them, and the show's layers slowly fall away to the point that the nature of who these people are, as well as the city they inhabit, becomes drawn into question. To say much more than that would be to rob you of the chaotic ride that is this show, but trust me, it's both a loving homage to its source material as well as a great story in its own right, and to boot, it has one of the best antagonists of the entire year. High Score Girl is one of those anime that feels like it was made specifically for me. A rivalry/romance anime set against the backdrop of 90s arcade culture. The show is burning with irreverence for old school 2D fighting games and classic video game systems, to the point that I worry it could be a little alienating to some. If you don't know what girls' handcuffs are, if you do not understand the shame of playing as Brown Ryu, then certain elements of High Score Girl may go right by you. However, the reason I don't hesitate to recommend it is because underneath all the references is a surprisingly well done romance story, as Haro and Ono gradually develop an emotional reliance on each other that neither one quite understands, with the endearing, awkward interactions between the two conveyed with a tenderness that meant by episode 12 I really gave a shit about these little nerds. The first 12 episodes are currently on Netflix, with more scheduled to come out in March, and I'd really advise not being put off by the obtuse subject matter or odd art style. This is a show with a surprising amount of heart that I think more people should really check out. Dragon Ball Super! Broly's back! Again! Has recently and somewhat unexpectedly surged up the Western cinema charts, and with good reason. The film is gorgeous, the characters rendered with a beautiful simplicity that allows for a spectacular amount of bounce and life in their animation, making for some great visual comedy, but also some of the most white-knuckle fight scenes Dragon Ball has ever seen. It's the first time I ever felt that I was actually in one of Dragon Ball's breakneck aerial encounters. The real heart of the movie, though, is the reimagining of one of Dragon Ball's most iconic and divisive characters, Broly, who up until this point has been the non-canon antagonist of 3 previous movies, titled Broly is Here, oh no, Broly is here again, and oh god, now he's made of slime. I've never personally hated Broly, his outlandish 90s design meant that was impossible, but his backstory of he is evil because Goku cried too much when they were babies is, well... And so it's amazing to see Broly now reimagined as this sympathetic giant, raised under his tyrannical, vengeance-obsessed father and tortured by a power he cannot control. All Broly really wants is to spend time with his giant space dogger, and it's that innocence contrasted against the danger he presents to the rest of reality that makes the new Broly such an endearing character, which in turn transforms the battle with him into more a struggle for the soul of Broly rather than a contest of who is stronger. I loved this movie. I love the references to the old non-canon Dragon Ball movies, I love the nods to Dragon Ball's lore, and would genuinely watch a spin-off series about new characters Chilai and Lemo. Especially Chilai. Oh god, why do I keep falling in love with wrestlers and cartoons? And overall, I can't recommend Dragon Ball Super Broly enough. It's the blistering fun of Dragon Ball captured in a heartfelt new light, and the most fun I've had with the series in years. You're probably going to know from just the footage on screen if Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight is for you. The game is a gorgeous combination of beautifully animated and straight up adorable pixel art, crossed with the moody, oppressive atmosphere of a Souls game, as you explore the ruined kingdom of Kras, broken and decayed under the reign of its insane queen. Weighty, hard-hitting animations combined with tight, responsive controls make for meaty, satisfying combat, with one mid-game boss encounter in particular demanding such a degree of timing and finesse that I felt like I was playing a 2D fighting game against an equally skilled player. It costs less than the price of a fancy sandwich and is available on everything, including a recently released port to Switch. Highly recommended. To my delight and surprise, the third entry to the long-forgotten No More Heroes series recently released this year with Travis Strikes Again. Seeing series protagonist Travis Touchdown sucked into a magical video game console in which he must travel to 6 different games and defeat the main character of each in order to be granted a magic wish who his ally/nemesis Badman is going to use to resurrect his daughter, who Travis killed in No More Heroes 1, it's weird. The game's been criticised for its repetitive combat, and I do think that's fair, but I've always come to the games of Suda51, and in particular No More Heroes, for their ability to transport me into a world that feels like a 90s art house action movie on LSD, and that's exactly what Travis Strikes Again is. From the outlandish nature of the story to the bizarre way it's told, jumping from CG cutscene to text adventure to live action footage. It's a particular brand of insanity that I only ever really find in the world of No More Heroes, and honestly, that's just a world I am so happy to be back in. If you are brand new to the series, I really would not recommend this be your first game, but also that No More Heroes 1 and 2 are still classics worth checking out. And hey, give me long enough and I might someday make the argument as to why that's something you'd want to do. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the most frustrating games I have ever played. I can't count the amount of times I failed out of missions for arbitrary reasons, how often I grew weary of its repetitive gunfights, or the numerous unintended incidents of me punching my beloved horse, Wily Tim. And yet, despite everything, this game was, next to Yakuza 6, my favourite game I played last year, for the simple reason that it damn near broke my heart. Watching the story of Arthur Morgan evolve from spaghetti western to a man slowly coming to terms with his own mortality and having to face the life he's led was a beautiful and devastating experience as the troubled anti-hero struggles to make his way in a world of people, communities and ideals just falling apart. I know I'm not adding anything new or substantial to the conversation that surrounds Red Dead, nor am I likely to introduce it to anyone who hasn't already heard of it, but Arthur Morgan's story of loss and redemption is one that is going to haunt me for years and years to come, and I just needed to have my say on that. And in particular, that I don't think I'll ever forget the line,
"We're more ghosts than people."
Lastly, some book/comic recommendations. Neko Kahara Stray Cat Samurai is a manga chronicling the adventures of Norachio, a masterless samurai wandering a fantasy-tinged feudal Japan divided by a stringent caste system. Kept cats who have aligned themselves with their human owners, and strays, the oppressed underclass who wish to live life by their own way. The story is filled with loving nods to samurai fiction and philosophy as its feline warriors meditate over death, war and life. But the star of the show here is its sublime artwork, penned by the exceptionally talented Hiroyuki Takei, who you may be familiar with from Shaman King. Even small scenic panels of the Japanese countryside spark with a stylistic flair, while the characters themselves are ablaze with some of the boldest and most expressive illustration I've seen in contemporary manga. Worth it for the artwork alone, but the original world and characters are a lot of fun too, so if you found yourself enjoying Shaman King back in the day, I highly recommend checking this out. Lastly, this one's going to be a little different, but I want to mention the book Anxiety as an Ally by Dan Reichert. I haven't talked too much about it on this channel, but anxiety is something I've struggled with for about 6 years now, and so if you've ever suffered from a constant low-key daily anxiety or more acute panic attacks, I understand how difficult that can be, but also want to recommend you what a great resource this book is. It's a short, simple read, but will help give you the tools to help cope with anxiety and reach a better quality of life. Guys, that's gonna do it, and yes, I'm back. The time off was badly needed, but it feels really good to be making videos again, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. I'm definitely going to try and look after myself a little better in terms of work-life balance this year. I don't think I'm going to try and hit deadlines anymore. I think the videos are just going to go out when they go out. But I also have some projects coming up that I'm really excited for people to see. In the meantime, if you want to support this channel, you can do so over at patreon.com/super-eyepatchwolf. And before we finish, I just have 3 quick little shoutouts. 1, thank you to Poolboy for letting me use his track in the transitions yet again. I love this this guy's music. He refuses to let me pay him, so please do check out his SoundCloud. 2, I'm on Twitch now at twitch.tv/supereyepatchwolf. And 3, I'll be holding a panel at Shurukon in Dublin at 5 PM next Saturday, the 23rd. So if you're in town, do stop by. Find me hosting the Let's Fight a Boss video game podcast. I'm also on Twitter at eyepatchwolf. And I guess just to finish, I want to say thank you for all the messages, comments, and even videos of support. It was really overwhelming, but in a good way, and it's really good to know that this channel means something to people, and I just really want to thank everyone for that. So anyway, guys, look, that's gonna do it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.